The Secret Doctrine by Elena Petrovna Blavatsky, a facsimile of the original edition of 1888, printed by the Cunningham Press, Alhambra, California. Book 2, Part 1, Anthropogenesis, stanzas translated with commentaries, from the Secret Book of John. Stanza 2 continued, with verses 8 through 10. 8. The flames came, the fires with the sparks, the night fires and the day fires. The flames are a hierarchy of spirits parallel to, if not identical with, the burning, fiery seraphim, mentioned by Isaiah, chapter 6, verses 2 through 6. Those who attend, according to Hebrew theogony, the throne of the Almighty. Melcha is the Lord of the flames. When he appears on earth, he assumes the personality of a Buddha, says a popular legend. He is one of the most ancient and revered Lars, a Buddhist Saint Michael. They dried out the turbid dark waters. With their heat they quenched them. The Lars, spirits of the high, the Lamayan, those of below, came. They slew the forms which were two- and four-faced. They fought the goat-men and the dog-headed men, and the men with fishes' bodies. The word below must not be taken to mean infernal regions, but simply a spiritual or rather ethereal being of a lower grade, because near to the earth, or one step higher than our terrestrial sphere, while the Lhasa are spirits of the highest spheres, whence the name of the capital of Tibet, Lhasa. Besides a statement of a purely physical nature and belonging to the evolution of life on earth, there may be another allegorical meaning attached to this sloka, or indeed, as is taught, several. The flames or fires represent spirit or the male element, and water, matter, or the opposite element. And here again we find in the action of the spirit slaying the purely material form a reference to the eternal struggle on the physical and psychic planes between spirit and matter, besides a scientific cosmic fact. For, as said in the next verse, Verse 9, Mother Water, the great sea, wept. She arose. She disappeared in the moon, which had lifted her, which had given her birth. Now what can this mean? Is it not an evident reference to tidal action in the early stage of the history of our planet in its fourth round? Modern research has been busy of late in its speculations on the Paleozoic high tides. Mr. Darwin's theory was that not less than 52 million years ago, and probably much more, the moon originated from the Earth's plastic mass. Starting from the point where research was left by Helmholtz, Ferrel, Sir William Thomson and others, he retracted the course of tidal retardation of the Earth's rotary motions far back into the very night of time, and placed the moon during the infancy of our planet at only a fraction of its present distance. In short, his theory was that it is the moon which separated from the Earth. The tidal evolution concurring with the swing of the globular mass, centrifugal tendency being then nearly equal to gravity, the latter was overcome, and the tidally elevated mass could thus separate completely from the Earth. Note: but see the difficulties suggested later in the works of various geologists against this theory. Compare Sir R.S. Bull's article in Nature, December 1, 1881, and also what the American geologists say. End of note. The occult teaching is the reverse of this. The moon is far older than the Earth, and, as explained in Book 1, it is the latter which owes its being to the former, however astronomy and geology may explain the fact. Hence the tides and the attraction to the moon, as shown by the liquid portion of the globe, ever striving to raise itself towards its parent. This is the meaning of the sentence that the mother water arose and disappeared in the moon, which had lifted her, which had given her birth. Verse 10. When they, the Rupas, were destroyed, Mother Earth remained bare. She asked to be dried. Notes: the goddess who gave birth to these primordial monsters, in the account of Berosus, was Talat, in Greek, Thalassa, the sea, and see, for comparison, the account of creation by Berosus, Alexander Polyhistor, and the hideous being born from the twofold principle, earth and water, in the abyss of primordial creation. Nereids, centaurs, men with the limbs of horses and human bodies, and Chimneras, men with the heads of horses, created by Brahma in the commencement of the Kalpa. End of notes. The time for its incrustation had arrived. The waters had separated and the process was started. It was the beginning of a new life. This is what one key divulges to us. Another key teaches the origin of water, its admixture with fire, liquid fire it calls it, and enters upon an alchemical description of the progeny of the two, solid matter such as minerals and earths. Note. See commentary following Sloka 18. End of note. From the waters of space, the progeny of the male spirit fire and the female gaseous water has become the oceanic expanse on earth. Varuna is dragged down from the infinite space to reign as Neptune of the finite seas. As always, the popular fancy is found to be based on a strictly scientific foundation. Water is the symbol of the female element everywhere, mater, from which the letter M is derived pictorially from a water hieroglyph. It is the universal matrix, or the great deep. Venus, the great Mother Virgin, issues forth from the sea wave, and Cupid, or Eros, is her son. But Venus is the late mythological variant of Gaia, or Gaia, the earth, which, in its high aspect, is nature, prakriti, and metaphysically aditi, and even mula prakriti, the root of prakriti, or its noumenon. Hence Cupid, or love, in its primitive sense, is eros, the divine will, or desire of manifesting itself through visible creation. Thence Forhat, the prototype of eros, becomes on earth the great power, life electricity, or the spirit of life-giving. Let us remember the Greek theogony and enter into the spirit of its philosophy. We are taught by the Greeks, see Iliad 4:201-246, that all things, gods included, owe their being to the ocean and his wife Thetis, the latter being Gaia, the earth or nature. But who is ocean? Ocean is the immeasurable space, spirit in chaos, which is the deity. See Book 1. And Thetis is not the earth, but primordial matter in the process of formation. In our case, it is no longer Aditi Gaia who begets Uranus or Varuna, the chief Aditya among the 7 planetary gods, but Prakriti, materialized and localized. The moon, masculine in its theogonic character, is, in its cosmic aspect only, the female generative principle, as the sun is the male emblem thereof. Water is the progeny of the moon, an androgyne deity with every nation. Evolution proceeds on the laws of analogy in cosmos as in the formation of the smallest globe. Thus the above, applying to the modus operandi at the time when the universe was appearing, applies also in the case of our Earth's formation. This stanza opens by speaking of 30 crores, 30 million of years. We may be asked, what could the ancients know of the duration of geological periods, where no modern scientist or mathematician is able to calculate their duration with anything like approximate accuracy? Whether they had or had not better means, and it is maintained that they had them in their zodiacs, still the chronology of the ancient Brahmins shall now be given as faithfully as possible. The chronology of the Brahmins. No greater riddle exists in science, no problem is more hopelessly insoluble than the question, how old, even approximately, are the sun and moon, the earth and man? What does modern science know of the duration of the ages of the world, or even of the length of geological periods? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. If one turns to science for chronological information, one is told by those who are straightforward and truthful, as for instance Mr. Pengelly, the eminent geologist, we do not know. Note. For a similar admission, see Professor Lefebvre's Philosophy, page 481. End of note. One will learn that, so far, no trustworthy numerical estimate of the ages of the world and man could be made, and that both geology and anthropology are at sea. Yet, when a student of esoteric philosophy presumes to bring forward the teachings of occult science, he is at once set upon. Why should this be so, since, when reduced to their own physical methods, the greatest scientists have failed to arrive even at an approximate agreement? It is true that science can hardly be blamed for it. Indeed, in the Cimmerian darkness of the prehistoric ages, the explorers are lost in a labyrinth whose great corridors are doorless, allowing no visible exit into archaic past. Lost in the maze of their own conflicting speculations, rejecting, as they have always done, the evidence of Eastern tradition without any clue or one single certain milestone to guide them, what can geologists or anthropologists do but pick up the slender thread of Ariadne when they first perceive it, and then proceed at perfect random? Therefore, we are first told that the farthest date to which documentary record extends is now generally regarded by anthropology as but the earliest distinctly visible point of the prehistoric period, from Encyclopaedia Britannica. At the same time, it is confessed that beyond that period stretches back a vast infinitude, a vast indefinite series of prehistoric ages from the same source. It is with those specified ages that we shall begin. They are prehistoric to the naked eye of matter only. To the spiritual eagle eye of the seer and the prophet of every race, Ariadne's thread stretches beyond that historic period, without break or flaw, surely and steadily, into the very night of time, and the hand which holds it is too mighty to drop it, or even let it break. Records exist, although they may be rejected as fanciful by the profane, though many of them are tacitly accepted by philosophers and men of great learning, and meet with an unvarying refusal only from the official and collective body of orthodox science. And since the latter refuses to give us even an approximate idea of the duration of the geological ages, save in a few conflicting and contradictory hypotheses, let us see what Aryan philosophy can teach us. Such computations as are given in Manu and the Puranas, save trifling and the most evidently intentional exaggerations, are, as already stated, almost identical with those taught in esoteric philosophy. This may be seen by comparing the two in any Hindu calendar of recognized orthodoxy. The best and most complete of all such calendars at present, as vouched for by the learned Brahmins of southern India, is the already mentioned Tamil calendar, called the Tirukanda Panchanga, compiled, as we are told, from and in full accordance with secret fragments of Asuramaia's data. As Asuramaya is said to have been the greatest astronomer, so he is whispered to have also been the most powerful sorcerer of the White Island, which had become black with sin, that is, of the islands of Atlantis. The White Island is a symbolical name. Asuramaya is said to have lived, see the tradition of Jana of Bhaskara, in Romakapura in the west, because the name is an allusion to the land and cradle of the sweatborn of the third race. The land or continent had disappeared ages before Asuramaya lived, since he was an Atlantean. But he was a direct descendant of the wise race, the race that never dies. Many are the legends concerning this hero, the pupil of Surya, the sun god himself, as the Indian accounts allege. It matters little whether he lived on one or another island, but the question is to prove that he was no myth, as Dr. Weber and others would make him. The fact of Romakapura in the west being named as the birthplace of this hero of archaic ages is the more interesting because it is so very suggestive of the esoteric teaching about the sweat-born races, the men born from the pores of their parents. Romakupas means hair pores in Sanskrit. In Mahabharata 12:10-308, a people named Raumayus are said to have been created from the pores of Virabhadara, the terrible giant who destroyed Daksha's sacrifice. Other tribes and people are also represented as born in this way. All these are references to the later second and the earlier third root races. The following figures are from the calendar just referred to. A footnote marks the points of disagreement with the figures of the Arya Samaj school. 1. From the beginning of cosmic evolution up to the Hindu year Tarana, or 1887, 1,955,884,687 years. Note: the esoteric doctrine says that this cosmic evolution refers only to our solar system, while exoteric Hinduism makes the figure refer, if we do not mistake, to the whole universal system. End of note. 2. The astral, mineral, vegetable, and animal kingdoms up to man have taken to evolve 300 millions of years. Note: another point of disagreement. Occultism says the astral prototypes of the mineral, vegetable, and animal kingdoms up to man have taken that time, 300 million years, to evolve, reforming out of the cast-off materials of the preceding round, which, though very dense and physical in their own cycle, are relatively ethereal as compared with the materiality of our present middle round. At the expiration of these 300 million years, nature, on the way to the physical and material down the arc of descent, begins with mankind and works downward, hardening or materializing forms as it proceeds. Thus the fossils found in strata, to which an antiquity not of 18, but of many hundreds of millions of years must be ascribed, belong in reality to forms of the preceding round, which, while living, were far more ethereal than physical, as we know the physical. That we perceive and disinter them as tangible forms is due to the process of materialization or crystallization referred to, which took place subsequently at the beginning of the fourth round, and reached its maximum after the appearance of man, proceeding parallel with its physical evolution. This alone illustrates the fact that the degree of materiality of the earth changes pari passu with that of its inhabitants, and thus man now finds as tangible fossils what were once the, to his present senses, ethereal forms of the lower kingdoms. The above Brahmanical figures refer to evolution beginning on globe A and in the first round. In this volume we speak only of this, the fourth round. End of note. 3. Time from the first appearance of humanity on planetary chain. 1,664,500,987 years. Note: this difference and the change of ciphers in the last three triplets of figures the writer cannot undertake to account for. According to every calculation, once the 300 millions are subtracted, the figures ought to stand 1,655,884,687. But they are given as stated in the Tamil calendar above named, and as they were translated. The school of the late Pandit Dayanand Saraswati, founder of the Arya Samaj, gives a date of 1,960,852,987. See the Arya magazine of Lahore. The cover, which bears the words Aryan Era, 1,960,852,987. End of note. 4. The number that elapsed since the Vaivasvata Manvantara, or the human period, up to the year 1887, is just 18,680,728 years. Note: Vaivasvata Manu is the one human being. Some versions add to him the 7 rishis, who in the Matsya Avatar allegory is saved from the deluge in a boat, like Noah in the ark. Therefore, this Vaivasvata Manvantara would be the post-diluvian period. This, however, does not refer to the later Atlantean or Noah's deluge, nor to the cosmic deluge or pralaya of obscuration, which preceded our round, but to the appearance of mankind in the latter round. There is a great difference made, however, between the Naimitika occasional or incidental, Prakritika elemental, Atyantika the absolute, and Nitya the perpetual pralaya, the latter being described as Brahma's contingent recoalescence of the universe at the end of a Brahma's day. The question was raised by a learned Brahmin theosophist whether there is such a thing as a cosmic pralaya, because otherwise the Logos, Krishna, would have to be reborn, and he is Aya, unborn. We cannot say why. The Logos is said to be born only metaphorically, as the sun is born daily, or rather a beam of that sun is born in the morning and is said to die when it disappears, whereas it is simply reabsorbed into the parent essence. Cosmic pralaya is for things visible, not for the arupa, formless world. The cosmic or universal pralaya comes only at the end of 100 years of Brahma, when the universal dissolution is said to take place. Then the avyaya, say the exoteric scriptures, the eternal life symbolized by Vishnu, assuming the character of Rudra, the destroyer, enters into the 7 rays of the sun and drinks up all the waters of the universe. Thus fed, the 7 solar rays dilate to 7 suns and set fire to the whole cosmos. End of note. 5. The full period of one Manvantara is 308,448,000 years. 6. 14 Manvantaras plus the period of one Satya Yuga make 1 day of Brahma, or a complete Manvantara, and make 4,320,000,000 years. Therefore, a Mahayuga consists of 4,320,000 years. Note, since the Mahayuga is the 1,000th part of a day of Brahma. End of note. The year 1887 is from the commencement of Kali Yuga, 4,989 years. To make this still clearer in its details, the following computations by Rao Bahadur Srinivas Rao are given from the Theosophist of November 1885. 360 days of mortals make a year. Mortal years 1. Krita Yuga contains 1,728,000 mortal years. Treta Yuga contains 1,296,000 years. Dvapara Yuga contains 864,000 years. Kali Yuga contains 432,000 years. The total of the said 4 yugas constitute a Mahayuga, 4,320,000 years. 71 of such Mahayugas form the period of the reign of one Manu, 306,720,000 mortal years. The reign of 14 Manus embraces the duration of 994 Mahayugas, which is equal to 4,294,080,000 mortal years. Add sandhis, that is, intervals between the reign of each Manu, which amount to 6 Mahayugas, equal to 25,920,000 mortal years. The total of these reigns and interregnums of 14 Manus is 1,000 Mahayugas, which constitute a kalpa, that is, 1 day of Brahma. 4,320,000,000 mortal years. As Brahma's night is of equal duration, 1 day and night of Brahma would contain 8,640,000,000 years. 360 of such days and nights make 1 year of Brahma, make 3,110,400,000,000 years. 100 such years constitute the whole period of Brahma's age, that is, Mahakalpa, 311,040,000,000,000 mortal years. These are the exoteric figures accepted throughout India, and they dovetail pretty nearly with those of the secret works. The latter, moreover, amplify them by division into a number of esoteric cycles, never mentioned in Brahmanical popular writings, one of which, the division of the yugas into racial cycles, is given elsewhere as an instance. The rest, in their details, have of course never been made public. They are nevertheless known to every twice-born, Dviya or initiated, Brahmin, and the Puranas contain references to some of them in veiled terms, which no matter-of-fact Orientalist has yet endeavored to make out, nor could he if he would. These sacred astronomical cycles are of immense antiquity, and most of them pertain, as stated, to the calculations of Narada and Asuramaya. The latter has the reputation of a giant and a sorcerer, but the antediluvian giants, the Gibborim of the Bible, were not all bad or sorcerers, as Christian theology, which sees in every occultist a servant of the evil one, would have it, nor were they worse than many of the faithful son of the Church. A Torquemada and a Catherine de Medicis certainly did more harm in their day and in the name of their master than any Atlantean giant or demigod of antiquity ever did, whether his name was Cyclops or Medusa, or yet the Orphic Titan, the agnupedal monster known as Ephialtes. There were good, quote, giants, unquote, in days of old, just as there are bad, quote, pygmies, unquote, now. And the Rakshasas and Yakshas of Lanka are no worse than our modern dynamiters and certain Christian and civilized generals during modern wars, nor are they myths. He who would laugh at Briareus and Orion ought to abstain from going to or even talking of Karnak or Stonehenge, remarks somewhere a modern writer. As the Brahmanical figures given above are approximately the basic calculations of our esoteric system, the reader is requested to carefully keep them in mind. In the Encyclopaedia Britannica one finds, as the last word of science, that the antiquity of man is allowed to stretch only over tens of thousands of years. Note. See article Geology in Encyclopaedia Britannica. End of note. It becomes evident that as these figures may be made to fluctuate between 10,000 and 100,000, therefore they mean very little, if anything, and only render still denser the darkness surrounding the question. Moreover, what matters it that science places the birth of man in the pre- or post-glacial drift, if we are told at the same time that the so-called Ice Age is simply a long succession of ages which, shaded without abrupt change of any kind into what is termed the human or recent period, the overlapping of geological periods having been the rule from the beginning of time. The latter, quote, rule, unquote, only results in the still more puzzling, even if strictly scientific and correct, information that even today man is contemporary with the Ice Age in the Alpine valleys and in the Finnmark. Note, this allows a chance even to the biblical Adam chronology of 6,000 years. Same source. End of note. Thus, had it not been for the lessons taught by the secret doctrine and even by exoteric Hinduism and its traditions, we should be left to this day to float in perplexed uncertainty between the indefinite ages of one school of science, the tens of thousands of years of the other, and the 6,000 years of the Bible interpreters. This is one of the several reasons why, with all the respect due to the conclusions of the men of learning of our modern day, we are forced to ignore them in all such questions of prehistoric antiquity. Modern geology and anthropology must of course disagree with our views, but occultism will find as many weapons against these two sciences as it has against astronomical and physical theories, in spite of Mr. Lang's assurance that, in chronological calculations of this sort concerning older and later formations, there is no theory, and they are based on the positive facts, limited only by a certain possible, within brackets question mark, amount of error either way. Occultism will prove scientific confessions in hand that geology is very much in error, and very often even more so than astronomy. In this very passage, Mr. Lang, which gives to geology preeminence for correctness over astronomy, we find a passage in flagrant contradiction to the admissions of the best geologists themselves. Says the author, in short, the conclusions of geology, at any rate up to the Silurian period, when the present order of things was fairly inaugurated, are approximate, truly so, facts and not theories. Why the astronomical conclusions are theories based on data so uncertain that while in some cases they give results incredibly short, in others they give results almost incredibly long. End of quote. Note, to the Silurian period as regards mollusks and animal life, granted, but what do they know of man? End of note. After which the reader is advised that the safest course seems to be to assume that geology really proves the duration of the present order of things to have been somewhere over 100 millions of years, as astronomy gives an enormous, though unknown time in the past, and to come in the future for the birth, growth, maturity, decline and death of the solar system, of which our Earth is a small planet now passing through the habitable phase." Unquote, page 49. Judging from past experience, we do not entertain the slightest doubt that once called upon to answer the absurd, unscientific and preposterous claims of exoteric and esoteric Aryan chronology, the scientist of the results incredibly short, that is, only 15 million years, and the scientist who would require 600 million years, together with those who accept Mr. Huxley's figures of 1 billion since sedimentation began in Europe, see World Life, would all be as dogmatic one as the other. Nor would they fail to remind the occultist and the Brahmin that it is the modern men of science alone who represent exact science, whose duty it is to fight inaccuracy and superstition. The Earth is passing through the habitable phase only for the present order of things, and as far as our present mankind is concerned, with its actual coats of skin and phosphorus for bones and brain. We are ready to concede the 100 millions of years offered by geology, since we are taught that our present physical mankind, or the Vajrashvata humanity, began only 18 millions of years ago. But geology has no facts to give us for the duration of geological periods, as we have shown, no more indeed than astronomy. The authentic letter from Mr. W. Pendley, FRS, quoted elsewhere, says that it is at present, and perhaps always will be, impossible to reduce, even approximately, geological time into years or even into millenniums. And having never hitherto excavated a fossil man of any other than the present form, what does geology know of him? It has traced zones or strata, and with these primordial zoological life down to the Silurian. When it has in the same way traced man down to his primordial protoplasmic form, then we will admit that it may know something of primordial man. If it is not very material to the bearings of modern scientific discovery and modern thought, whether man has existed in a state of constant, though slow, progression for the last 50,000 years of a period of 15 millions, or for the last 500,000 years of a period of 150 millions. According to Modern Science, etc., page 49, as Mr. S. Lang tells his readers, it is very much so for the claims of the occultists. Unless the latter show that it is a possibility, if not a perfect certainty, that man lived 18 millions of years ago, the secret doctrine might as well have remained unwritten. An attempt must, therefore, be made in this direction, and it is our modern geologists and men of science generally who will be brought to testify to this fact in the third part of this volume. Meanwhile, and notwithstanding the fact that Hindu chronology is constantly represented by the Orientalists as a fiction based on no actual computation, but simply childish boasting, it is nevertheless often twisted out of recognition to make it yield to and fit in with Western theories. Note on a fiction based on no actual computation, Wilson's translation of Vishnu Purana, Volume 1, pages 50 and 51. End of note. No figures have ever been more meddled with and tortured than the famous 432, followed by ciphers of the Yugas and Mahayugas. As the whole cycle of prehistoric events, such as the evolution and transformation of races and the extreme antiquity of man, hangs upon the said chronology, it becomes extremely important to check it by other existing calculations. If the Eastern chronology is rejected, we shall at least have the consolation of proving that no other, whether the figures of science or of the churches, is one whit more reliable. As Professor Max Müller expresses it, it is often as useful to prove what a thing is not as to show what it may be. And once we succeed in pointing out the fallacies of both Christian and scientific computations by allowing them a fair chance of comparison with our chronology, neither of the two will have a reasonable ground to stand upon in pronouncing the esoteric figures less reliable than its own. We may here refer the reader to our earlier work, Isis Unveiled, Volume 1, page 32, for some remarks concerning the figures which were cited a few pages back. Today, a few more facts may be added to the information they are given, which is already known to every Orientalist. The sacredness of the cycle of 4320, with additional ciphers, lies in the fact that the figures which compose it, taken separately or joined in various combinations, are each and all symbolical of the greatest mysteries in nature. Indeed, whether one takes the 4 separately, or the 3 by itself, or the 2 together making 7, or again the 3 added together and yielding 9, all these numbers have their application in the most sacred and occult things, and record the workings of nature in her eternally periodical phenomena. They are never-erring, perpetually recurring numbers, unveiling, to him who studies the secrets of nature, a truly divine system, an intelligent planning cosmogony which results in natural cosmic divisions of times, seasons, invisible influences, astronomical phenomena with their action and reaction on terrestrial and even moral nature, on birth, death and growth, on health and disease. All these natural events are based and depend upon cyclical processes in the cosmos itself, producing periodic agencies which, acting from without, affect the earth and all that lives and breathes on it, from one end to the other of any manvantara. Causes and effects are esoteric, exoteric, and end-exoteric, so to say. In Isis Unveiled, we wrote that which we now repeat. We are at the bottom of a cycle and evidently in a transitory state. Plato divides the intellectual progress of the universe during every cycle into fertile and barren periods. In the sublunary regions, the spheres of the various elements remain eternally in perfect harmony with the divine nature, he says, but their parts, owing to a too close proximity to earth and their commingling with the earthly, which is matter and therefore the realm of evil, are sometimes according and sometimes contrary to divine nature. When those circulations, which Eliphas Levi calls currents of the astral light, in the universal ether which contains in itself every element, take place in harmony with the divine spirit, our earth and everything pertaining to it enjoys a fertile period. The occult powers of plants, animals, and minerals magically sympathize with the superior natures, and the divine soul of man is in perfect intelligence with these, quote, inferior, unquote, ones. But during the barren periods, the latter lose the magic sympathy, and the spiritual sight of the majority of mankind is so blinded as to lose every notion of the superior powers of its own divine spirit. We are in a barren period, the 18th century, during which the malignant fever of skepticism broke out so irrepressibly, has entailed unbelief as an hereditary disease upon the 19th. The divine intellect is veiled in man, his animal brain alone philosophizes. And philosophizing alone, how can it understand the soul doctrine? In order not to break the thread of the narrative, we shall give some striking proofs of these cyclic laws in Part 2, proceeding meanwhile with our explanations of geological and racial cycles. Next chapter is Stanza 3, Attempts to Create Man.